All right.
Changing process.
It looks like we've got 5:30, so we will call the zoning board of appeals meeting to order, February 8th. Can you please record the attendance? We will move on to Article 2, Pledge Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Article 3, approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Support.
Motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Moving on to Article 4. Approval of the minutes, December 14th, 2021.
Move to approve.
Support.
Motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. On to Article 5, approval of the minutes, December 21st, 2021.
Support. Yeah, move to support.
Yeah, I move to approve.
To approve.
We have a motion and support. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Article 6, we are at a point where we acknowledge anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on a non-agenda item or via the internet. Hearing none, we will move on to Article 7, case number 22-3689.
All right, so here the applicant is requesting a variance of section 4.09 of the zoning ordinance to allow one more accessory building on the property than what is permitted. They are requesting a variance to keep an approximately 12-foot by 24-foot shed on the property as they construct a roughly 1,300 square foot detached garage / pool house building. I do want to know that in the staff report, the size of the building was incorrectly listed as 8 by 12 feet. It is actually 12 feet by 24 feet as shown on the site plan submitted by the applicant. Since the property is under 3 acres in size, they are only permitted to have one accessory building on the property in addition to the attached garage on the property. The accessory building was brought to staff's attention during a review by our assessing department. The applicant had received a special use permit in September of 2020 for the pool house. But in that application that was submitted for the special use permit, there was no indication that there was an existing accessory building on the property. And the building and assessing departments also had no record of the shed at that time. Once staff was made aware of the shed, we informed the property owner that they would have to remove it before the pool house was completed, or they could also receive a variance to keep the shed. I did find a few similar cases that we've reviewed in the past. In those cases where a variance was granted, there was either an exceptional circumstance relating to the property, or the applicant was required to perform some action that brought the property closer to compliance. If the variance is denied, the applicant would be required to remove the shed before construction of the pool house is completed. If the variance is approved, the applicant would still need to receive a permit for the shed from the building department because it is over 200 square feet in size. During the site visit, I did also notice that the shed does not appear to meet the 10-foot side yard setback requirement, with the setback looking like it was maybe approximately 7 feet. So if the variance was approved, it'd be expected that the applicant would also need to move the shed to meet that 10-foot side yard setback. In reviewing the case, it did not appear that there are any exceptional circumstances that are unique to this property, and that granting the variance could result in a recurrent situation for other similar properties moving forward. At this time, staff do not support the variance request since it does not appear to meet the standards for granting a variance. If a variance is denied, I would also recommend that a deadline be put in place for having the shed removed, such as in 3 months' time or prior to a final inspection being scheduled for the pool house building, whichever would be sooner.
Any questions of staff?
My question is, and part of this is due to my own blindness, is the pool building separate from the garage, or are they integrated into the same structure?
So there's an attached garage on the home, and then this is a separate detached garage / pool building that's currently under construction.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions of staff? Thank you. Would the applicant like to address the board? Name and address, please.
What's that? Name and address?
Name and address, just for the
Annette
record.
Mayton, 1468 Butchick Avenue, Southeast, 49301. So I just say what I have to say? Is that what I do?
yep.
Okay. As you can see, I sent a letter of all my neighbors signing. They love that we have the shed because we have 4 children and we're eventually gonna, the 4th one's gonna have a vehicle. So we're gonna have 6 vehicles on our property. And they like everything, they're pretty particular. They like everything put away. And so with having all of our lawn equipment, my husband does all the yard work and he has a lot of equipment for that. So we don't have to use the space in our garage for that area. So we can try to put all of our vehicles and everything away. So that's, I mean, my neighbors, I know we don't have the acreage and we were trying to buy it from the neighbors. But I'm just asking permission just because my neighbors are on board with it as well, just because it makes the property look so much nicer and it's a, you know, custom, it's a really beautiful shed. It's not something that's, you know, obscene looking on the property.
Questions?
Sure.
How old is the shed?
It is 2 years, and I will say, we didn't know that about the permit. We thought because it was personal property and they said they could just wheel it on, set it down and wheel it like it's movable. That my husband wasn't aware. He thought because we could, if we were to sell and move, we could take it with us because it's movable. Because they take a little dolly and you can lift it up, you know, the Amish people brought it in. So we weren't aware about the permit. That's why we didn't realize the secondary situation.
You can move it on a dolly?
It's amazing. We can't move it on a dolly, but the Amish, when they brought it, it's huge, but it's this apparatus they use and they can, you know, place it on any foundation that you have. So we were thinking it was personal property. And if, you know, we wanted to sell someday, we could say, hey, we'd like to take the shed with us. Otherwise we would have gotten the proper permits.
Okay, so it was built off site somewhere else
Correct.
and then brought in,
Yes,
built by the
correct.
Amish.
Yes.
Brought in.
And it has like an all metal roof that's going to match the garage. And I mean, it's, you know, everything's designed to complement each other. So it's not just this, you know, it's a beautiful shed. And I think it really complements the property. And just keeps all the vehicles in the garage when we have 6 of them.
So right now you use it mostly for lawn equipment?
We use it
Bikes
for,
and that type of thing.
yeah, and I'm an artist, so I put a lot of my products in there. I have a lot of canvases and products that I use for my artwork, and which are really large for my business side of what I do as well.
So there's a setback issue as well. So what you're saying is you could move that
Oh,
shed
easily, it could
to-
just
to-
be pulled 3 feet.
to be
very
within.
easily,
Okay.
yeah.
And you said, I appreciated the notes and the signatures from the neighbors. I didn't get out to your place. How visible is the shed?
Not very, because it's tucked, we're in a very wooded, secluded, private drive.
That's what I thought.
So nobody can really see it. And so one of our neighbors that we asked, they didn't even know we had it because we're just so secluded.
That's my
Yeah.
impression.
Mhm.
That was important. So the neighbors are kind of for it and it's not
Yeah.
visible and it can be moved.
Yes. Yes, sir.
I'll ask a question. Obviously, throughout this process, you've had a chance to talk to staff.
Mhm.
And they've obviously, or my assumption is that they've explained the process of the black and white that stands before us of criteria that has to be met.
Yes, sir.
You guys have gone down the path of deciding to ask for the variance with knowing their recommendation.
Correct, sir.
Okay, so I just want to make sure you're aware of, okay? The board have any other questions?
I move to go into public hearing.
Okay, thank you. Well,
Support.
we have a motion and support to go into public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, we are in public hearing.
Brian, you get any other comments other than these signatures here of support?
I did not get any other ones. No.
Move to close public hearing?
Just one other thing, if I can ask staff. So you'd mentioned you did a search of prior cases. We have had various ones that have come to light that have been granted? Have there been ones that are similar that you could expand on that maybe had been turned down?
There really weren't too many that had been turned down. In a lot of these cases where the applicant brought it and it was approved, they had maybe done some change, or maybe they had a couple buildings too many and they removed the largest one, or in one example, even they put holes in the roof so it didn't meet our definition of a building. So there's usually maybe some action taken by the applicant to bring the property closer to compliance.
And was any of that options discussed with the owners?
Well, the too many buildings one wouldn't apply. We didn't discuss putting holes in the roof, right? I know.
Just throwing it out there.
That would
Yeah.
apply.
Is the definition of a building is a roof impervious to weather, so that like one got turned into more of a almost pergola type shelter was one of the previous examples. But yeah, I don't know if that would meet what they're looking for this one.
Okay. All right.
We have a motion to support.
Motion and support to close public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. We have closed. We will bring it back to the commission for discussion.
Sure. These are one of these unpleasant ones that nobody ever likes. First of all, I want to compliment the staff. I think the staff did a great job. And I think Brian's conclusion is correct, and he did the right thing as a staff member, trying to be totally impartial and going by the letter of the ordinance. On the other hand, 1.8 acres seems to be, it's a lot bigger than a small lot where where you're really going to be confined because it's a third of an acre and you see structures, too many structures on a small piece of property. And given that the building is unique, it complements the property. It is not visible. And where we really get concerned about is it's visible. And that the applicant is willing to move the shed to comply with the setbacks. I'm kind of going against what I would normally do and want to be positive and approve the variance. Now, I'm probably the biggest stickler in the world about setting precedent, and I don't like to do that. I don't like to go against the ordinance and set a precedent, but I feel comfortable with this because of the style of the building, because it's not visible, because they'll move it to be in compliance with the setbacks, and because of the strong neighbor support, which says it's not affecting the neighborhood. But I agree totally with Brian that it doesn't, there is a unique circumstance that wouldn't cause a recurrent situation. So I just wanted to get your input on that.
Tom, I hear exactly where you're going with it. I'm of the same mindset that we are always in this position of the black and white. I guess a key item to me is visibility. And as you discussed, is your thought that once they moved the shed potentially to reach the setback requirement, that some type of permanent screening or a condition of screening?
Well, it's already not visible. That's the key.
Yeah, but in that it's only 10 feet off the neighboring property line. Yes, there is currently trees, but obviously, as we know, trees can grow, trees can be cut. Is a thought that you would want to have some kind of
Yeah, let me ask you, I'm sorry, is it a net? Yeah. It's near the property line. Now, let's say you move the setback and you're 10 or 15 feet. How visible is it? Does it change the visibility to the neighbors?
No, because that's on the back side yard and it's all the woods.
That's what I thought. So no matter what, they're still not, they don't see it now and they're not going to see it.
No.
Okay, that's where I was going. I see where you're going. I agree.
Yeah, I'm
with
just
you.
wondering, I'm laying groundwork, I think, for future discussion. So when this discussion comes up at a later point, if somebody else can say, well, there's no discussion of screening there, why do I have discussion of screening and we're sitting in the middle of a field versus in the middle of woods would be my only concern.
Well, what I would be willing to do is move to approve the variance with the conditions that the applicant receive a permit for the shed from the building department, that they move the shed to meet the proper setbacks, that the shed remain visible which remain not visible to neighbors, which means if it were to be, then they need to put in proper landscaping screening to make it so it's not visible. And if they would agree to those conditions, again, because it's not visible, because it's complementary to the property, because they will move it and bring it into compliance, at least with the setbacks. And because it has such strong support from the neighbors and isn't visible, that's why I make a motion to approve the variance with those conditions.
I'll support that motion.
All right, everyone clear on the conditions?
Mhm.
Staff clear on the conditions?
What was the wording
Brian,
for
it
the
was,
screening?
they receive a permit for the shed from the building department. Is that okay? That they move the shed to be compliant with our setback requirements, which they move it, that it remains not visible to the neighbors via natural screening, if it doesn't already exist, or that they'll put in the natural screening. And if they would agree to those conditions, then that was the motion support.
Okay, motion and support. I will ask the applicant if they see anything unusual or argumentative about those.
Yeah, I mean, I'll do whatever.
All right, it looks like the applicant is in agreement with that. We have a motion and support. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Okay,
I'll do all.
we will move on to Article 8, case number 22-3690.
Thank you for doing this as well, asking your neighbors. That's really helpful.
All right, so the applicant here is requesting approval from the ZBA for a variance to allow for a lot split that would result in a smaller side yard building setback than what is permitted. The property is an approximately 14-acre parcel located on the north side of 36th Street in our transitional industrial zoning district. And it currently has 2 buildings on it, which are connected by a covered walkway. The proposed lot split would create 2 parcels with a new property line running between the 2 buildings. So each parcel would meet the width and area requirements of the zoning district, but the split would result in a side yard building setback on parcel A, the western parcel that does not meet the 25-foot setback requirement. All of the setbacks on parcel B, or the eastern parcel, would be met.
Brian, can you point those out again? The 2 buildings and the walkway.
Sure.
Just so I'm clear.
Yep, so here on the proposed property line going right down the middle
Okay.
of the property.
Mhm.
And here, this is parcel A with a building that they're showing here. And then this is the covered walkway between, and here's the current building on
Gotcha. Yep,
parcel
that's what I
B
thought.
on the
Okay.
east side. Yep. So on the site plan, the applicant shows that the existing building on parcel A, the western parcel would have a 17.6-foot setback after the split, which is measured at the very southern end of the current existing building. However, they also show that the southern section of the building will be removed and an addition will be constructed, which would meet the 25-foot setback requirement. So the northern section would still have a 19.7-foot setback. So that is why they're requesting a variance for the setback below 25 feet. I think it would be helpful to hear from the applicant why they are interested in splitting the lots and if they have an approximate timeline for when the construction of the proposed building addition may occur. Since the enclosed walkway extends across the proposed property line within both setbacks of the parcels, I believe that the walkway should be removed before a lot split can be finalized. If the variance is not approved, the applicant would most likely not be able to split the lot without completely removing one of the buildings. I did find 4 side and rear yard variances in the last 10 years for commercial or industrial properties, all of which were approved. In those cases, there's a unique condition associated with the property, sometimes a large buffer yard on the neighboring property, or the same property owner owned both properties or something along that line. The fact that there are essentially 2 buildings located on the property is somewhat unique, as is the fact that the lot is large enough to be split, but could not be done so without a variance. The variance being requested appears to be the minimum necessary since all setback requirements on parcel B are met, and the variance requested for parcel A is the minimum possible. At this time, staff are recommending approval of the variance since it appears to meet our standards I think I would actually recommend that the variance be granted for a 17.6 foot side yard setback along the easterly property line as shown there, since that is what the existing conditions would be on site with the split being approved. And then I'd recommend that be approved with the two following conditions, which are that the enclosed walkway connecting the two buildings is removed before lot split is finalized, and any new construction or building addition shall meet the setback requirements of the zoning district.
Questions, staff? Tom?
Brian, why the enclosed walkway connecting the two buildings? Why does it need to be removed?
Because that's considered part of the building going within the setback on both properties within that
Oh.
25 feet. And so that's why I would have to see that being removed. 'Cause
I can
that's-
ask the applicant, do they need that walkway?
Yeah, it'd probably be a question for the applicant. They're showing it being removed when that addition
Oh,
comes,
okay,
but I
okay,
don't know
that's
the
good.
exact
Okay,
Okay.
timeline in their mind of when it would be.
okay, thank you.
And obviously that is the only structure connecting the two. So
Correct.
the property line does make that a code compliance issue.
Yeah,
So
it
has
does.
staff reviewed this from the building department perspective?
Not, the building department hasn't really commented on yet, just from the variance side. Obviously, when construction comes in with the addition, they'd be closely reviewing that. That'd go through a full site plan review then.
Okay. Yeah, so I will let the rest of the board know when you do a property line through a building like that, there are fire separations requirement. So you can create the separation to meet the fire code, but then you do essentially have a zero lot setback.
Are you saying this is, it's
So-
required for this, in this case? or not?
Well, the variance is being requested for 17 plus feet,
Okay, so that's, yeah.
but technically if that stays, your variance is 0 feet.
Sure.
So,
I
Yeah.
see.
okay. Any other questions of staff? Okay, we will turn it over to the applicant for their presentation.
Good evening. Dustin Hemis,
Okay.
representing GDK Construction and Geenan Properties, 12 West 8th Street, Holland. So just some information as to what's being proposed. The current parcel as a whole is owned by one entity, and we're looking to separate it into two parcels. The current owner keeping the eastern portion in the building, and then us purchasing the western portion on the new lot line that's shown. Basically, what we're trying to do is take over a underutilized building. Basically, the western portion of the two buildings is not occupied and has not been for many years, so it's kind of dilapidating in some ways. What we would be doing is we're working with a client to basically move into that facility. So we would be removing the southern portion, call it third, if you will, a little less than, and then building an addition plus remodeling, rehabilitating the existing building that's kind of outlined, shown to remain. So the idea is the walkway would go away because it would no longer be needed. There is no desire or need to connect the two buildings between each other, because it would be two completely separate entities owning both buildings.
And that answers staff's question about why.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, there was definitely, we
Right.
would definitely get rid of it. One of the first things we would do.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have one.
Oh.
Mhm.
Are you related to Brad Hemis?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I take that back. Depends. I should have answered that
Better
differently.
answer.
Too late.
Depends on your relationship and your knowledge of him.
I did many projects with your father over the years.
Uncle. It's an
Oh,
uncle,
uncle.
yes. So it is relation, but not immediate.
Good save, good save.
Tell him Ralph said hi.
Okay, I will do that. I talk to him often.
Okay.
All right, with that, I will look for a recommendation for the public hearing.
We'll go into public hearing.
Support.
Motion and support to go into open public hearing. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, we are in public hearing. Any comments online? No comments online. Appears no one is willing to step up, so I would entertain a motion to close.
So support.
We have motion and support to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I do have one question.
Oh.
Dustin, do you have any problems with the conditions that the staff has here?
Can you remind me of?
Number one is the enclosed walkway connecting the two buildings is to be removed before lot split is finalized. You said that's not a big deal. And then the second one is any new construction or building addition shall meet the setback requirements of the zoning district.
Yeah, outside of this.
Right.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Am I correct in those, Brian?
Yeah, yep. So anything, the existing building is receiving the variance, anything new, any new
Right.
addition construction has to be that 25 feet from the property. line.
Right, but the existing, we can prove the variance for a side yard building setback of 17.6 along easterly property line. You're good with that?
Yep.
Yep, okay, we're good to go. Thanks. I just want to make sure that you knew the conditions.
We have motion and support on the closing. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Motion carries. We are closing the public hearing. Back to the commission for discussion. Any question of the commissioners?
No, I just asked my questions and he answered. He's
All
giving
right.
conditions.
I would entertain a motion if anyone has one.
I'll move to approve case number 22-3690 for MedDirect Inc. with the conditions that are outlined by staff.
Support.
Motion and support. Pretty cut and dry. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We are on to Article 9, election of officials.
Yeah, so as usual, at our first meeting of the year, we elect the officials and our current chairperson and vice chair. They've only been in the role for 1 year, so you are eligible for re-election at this time. And then the only other position is the appointment to the Village Design Review Committee, which, as many of you might know, hasn't met in a while, but we still try to appoint someone to that position in case there is a need to meet there.
Who's the current vice chair? Is it?
Ralph is the vice chair and slash secretary. Aaron's our chair, and then Lou was the appointment to the Village Design Review Committee.
I make motion to retain Aaron and Ralph as is for another year.
We have motion and support.
Support.
Favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. We'll go with that.
And who's currently on the village design?
Lou is currently.
Well,
I think we sticking with it.
He's not here.
I support, I think that is a motion and I support it.
We will leave it at that. So motion to keep Lou as the
left too.
village. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. We'll go with that. In our packet, we have the annual report, Article 10, for review. Anyone has any questions now or later? Obviously, staff is available to answer them. Article 11, our rules of conduct. We continue to abide by the same set of rules, so planning principles as well. So if anybody has any questions,
One
we do
comment.
have one.
I did talk to Brian last night at our planning commission meeting about rules of conduct. That we are currently about to approve the revised bylaws. And one of the changes we're making is taking out the conflict of interest section that was in the bylaws. And I've asked Brian to blend those conflict of interest rules in with what's in rules of conduct. And to make one simple list of both of those together. Many of the items are address totally separate issues. And there's probably 6 in bylaws, and probably 5 or 6 in the rules of conduct, and together we'll probably come up with about 12 items total on conflict of interest.
Okay. All right. Planning principles, 2021 calendar. I'll have it in front of you. Or in the packet. Article 14, do we have any other business?
Any other business, Brian? You know?
I don't. Our next meeting's scheduled for March 8th. I haven't had any applications yet for it, so we may be canceling that one, but I'll know by the end of the week.
Good.
Okay. And with that, we'll move on to Article 15, which is adjournment. I will accept the motion?
So moved.
Support.
We have a motion and support to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. We are adjourned.
So we get to, so Scott's
It's still not a record, though. It's
Hey,
not.
Scott, this
Ask